What's the missing ingredient to get more sales? And how do you generate more of that missing ingredient? I see so many entrepreneurs trying to scale from 5 to 6 to 7 figures, and they just can't seem to break through that income ceiling. And I believe it's because they're missing this one key ingredient that could actually get you that 7-figure future consistently. Let's dive in. Hello, and welcome to Fail to Win, a show where we love to make mistakes and learn from them so you can turn your passion into profits and live life on your own terms. I'm Amy van der Putten from FastForwardAmy, your host and coach, and I'll bring you a new episode with simple strategies every Tuesday. Do you know, after all of these years of podcasting, I'm still nervous when I record a podcast. I still think, oh no, it's not going to be good enough. Or shouldn't I postpone this? Or should I just create, like later in the week? And then I just basically remind myself, no, Amy, you have to, because you have to be consistent, because you need these episodes to go out on time. And this actually relates to something I want to talk about today. So maybe you've been following me on my Instagram stories. Lately, I traveled to LA, met up with the mastermind I'm a part of. I saw a talk by Lewis Howes, chatted with him actually. I went on a retreat with my own mastermind clients. And these past 2 years have been really like years of rebuilding for me. I went back to the core of my product suite. I revamped my entire business and I really rebuilt a business I love again. And what's exceptional about that is, well, one, it wasn't easy, but what I want to talk about is that even in that, like, let's say a little bit of a dark time where I didn't really know how and what, I still managed to hit 7 figures consistently each year. And if you burn down your core programs, that's pretty special. And then this year, what's been happening is actually, I've just been getting so many applications in from people, just being like, voice notes like, hey, Amy, I just really feel like you're the coach for me. This is where I'm at. Can I sign up for your mastermind or other programs? And people just come to me, they find me, and they sign up for my programs really, really easily, no matter the price point. I rarely get a that's too expensive objection anymore. So I thought to talk about that today because I see a lot of people who are stuck at 6 figures, like 100K, 200K, maybe 300K, but who can't really break through to 7 figures. And I want to explain to you what one of the biggest reasons is why that happens and how you can actually fix this so you can actually build a way bigger and more stable business. And I'm not talking about passive income, but just like building up a really good reputation that makes people buy from you again and again and again. And Lewis Howes actually agrees with me on this one, so I'm going to let you in a little secret. He also shared during the retreat I was a part of, and that really aligns with the content of this episode. So the missing ingredient for more sales and how to get more of it. I remember years ago in 2019, I wanted to start my own podcast, the one you're currently listening to. And back then, it wasn't really a strategic decision for me, if I'm being honest. The podcast landscape in Belgium was still pretty small. I was just in a phase of my business where I was coaching a lot of clients, doing a lot for my clients, and I felt like I really needed a creative outlet where I could just share, make an impact, no expectations. I just wanted to help more people. And that's also one of the reasons why I wanted to create it in English. And I remember some people in my environment asking me why are you going to do that for free? And how long are you going to do that for? And I was like, oh, I don't know, just as long as it takes for what? And I was like, I don't know, just as long as I'm having fun and this is helping people, I'm just going to do it. And what I didn't know at that time was actually that this passion project, my podcast, would only 6 months later would generate over 1 million in sales, not because of brand partnerships or sponsorships, whatever, but because of the impact my podcast made and the trust it generated. And this is what we're talking about today. Often entrepreneurs are stuck at a certain income level because in the beginning, their audience is like, oh, you have a new thing, I want to buy it from you. But then with the next launch, your audience kind of starts knowing what you're doing is basically advertising, right? And they start feeling like they just know that you're selling to them. And the new kind of rubs off and they're not as inclined to buy from you anymore. And so what then happens is that when you're only showing up to sell something to people, they start knowing and they start tuning out because this is kind of as a kid when you were watching TV, a commercial hit and you'd go to a different channel, right? My brothers and I did that. We would be watching Dragon Ball Z, and then there would be a commercial break, so we'd switch to something else, and then we'd go back as soon as Dragon Ball Z started. And I seem to remember maybe we even set a timer on that. We're all very impatient people. So what happens when in your personal brand, for example, the only thing you do is launch, sell, people are going to start paying less and less attention because they feel like there's always something in it for you. But in fact, we actually need to give more before we ask. And I believe this has to do with building up trust with our audience. And so I've been talking a lot about, you need to be consistent, put out content consistently, be consistent, la-di-da. And sure, the algorithm loves it. It's good for your own discipline. But one of the biggest, ROIs to consistency is that it builds a lot of trust with your audience. And this is the thing, for example, with me, I have a lot of flaws in my brand. I'm not super cool. I don't always dress well. My brand doesn't look aesthetically pleasing. I often will make mistakes. I do sell a lot. There's a lot of things that I could definitely be doing better. And for me, mainly branding probably, because I'm very there's a new season and a new color, and I'll be like, yay, new colors, new fonts. None of my footage looks good. I haven't done a photo shoot in ages. This is what that feels like to me, is it's very perfectly imperfect. Sure, fun, but it could look more professional, right? So how do I get away with a lot of things being very perfectly imperfect is because I've inputted, I don't know how to say this, one thing into my brand, and that is incredible consistency in showing up. And when you look at the biggest brands out there, they're all extremely consistent, and they don't only show up when they are selling, they're showing up in other seasons too. And this is kind of like looking at athletes. They'll have off seasons. I always look at Formula One drivers because I love watching the Formula One series on Netflix. And sure, they'll have an off season, but they do drive over 20 races in a year, which is basically half the weekends of the year they are racing in these batched seasons. But in the off season, it's not like they're just going all out. Well, maybe they are. Maybe one of the Formula One drivers at one point will listen to my podcast and you're like, Amy, hate to disappoint you, but we are just completely wasted in the off season. But I don't really think so. They take really good care of their bodies. They work out a lot. And I think for entrepreneurs, this is the same. It's a long story. Where am I headed with this story? Where I'm headed is that when we show up consistently, it's actually going to build the stability of our brand. It's not going to be necessarily the ads. Well, it is if the ads are going to help us stay consistent. It's not going to be any of the things you do in English, the big launch or whatever. It's showing up consistently, also selling consistently, also podcasting consistently, and really nurturing your audience. Because when you show up consistently, they can trust you to also show up when they buy from you, and that you're not just going to be wishy-washy and just disappear. So I believe many entrepreneurs who want to grow from 6 to 7 figures could actually really 2x, 3x their business if they would just show up more consistently in terms of nurturing content. And what I'm talking about with nurturing content is content where you actually provide value and give either educational value or mindset shifts, but also infuse authenticity so that people really love your brand. So I don't think if you want to grow to 6 figures, go from 10K to 100K, you necessarily need a podcast or you need deeper long form content. But when you are growing from 6 to 7 figures, I really do believe for 80% of the personal brands and entrepreneurs, it's really going to pay off to infuse some type of nurturing type of content into your brand, which could be, a newsletter, a weekly YouTube, just something that is core content where you can provide value in terms of education or shifts, quick wins as well, and authenticity. So that's really, really you. And when you do that, trust is going to increase, but it's also just really going to compound because without you even realizing it. When you show up week after week after week after week, people are going to notice. But people will also notice the opposite when you say you're going to do something and you don't. So I guess this is a really short episode to invite you. And by the way, Lewis Howes said this as well. He said, consistency builds trust. And I was like, yes, preaching to the choir. I really believe this, but I've never been able to frame it this way. I've always known consistency is important, but why is consistency so important? Because this is the trust builder that gives your audience, the permission to buy from you, the permission to trust you, and that you won't take advantage of them. So how can you build more trust and more consistency into your content? Well, one way is to show up consistently, for example, with long-form content like podcasting. The way I do that is I batch my podcasts either once a month or twice a month. I'll do 2 episodes twice a month. I do think I could be more efficient about it. It's just lately I've been doing 2 at a time. So batching that, and then also batching the repurposing. So I was recently on a sales call with someone who was going to sign up for my mastermind, and she did have a podcast, but she didn't promote the podcast. And I think that's the second big problem we run into when we are consistent with something like a podcast and we're really excited, but then it doesn't really take off, or not enough people talk about it and reply to it. We're like, oh, that's kind of discouraging. And then after a while you stop, right? But this is often simply because we don't actually promote it enough. So where we think we need to put most of our time into creating a podcast and then just post about it once, you should actually post about the fact that you've created a podcast at least 10 times. I turn every podcast into 12 pieces of content, which is something you can do too. You don't have to do it all alone, and that doesn't have to be time consuming or expensive. After recording this episode, I'll spend about 20 minutes on my copy, and then I'll make sure that gets turned into posts and on my feed and everything. If you want to learn from me how I do that, by the way, I've mentioned it many times, but if you've never watched my 10-minute tutorial and gotten my Google Doc prompt on how to turn your podcast into 10 or 12 pieces of content, you really, really should. You can apply this to any voice memo, podcast, video, whichever type of longer form-ish content you have. Just DM me the word buddy on Instagram for my content buddy tutorial, where I'll teach you in 10 minutes how to turn one piece of content into 10 or more pieces of content. And I'll give you the prompt and the instructions to go along with it to do this through ChatGPT or whatever. You won't end up with stereotypical content when you do that, because it will be based on your tone of voice, on a transcript of what you're recording, which is why it works so well. Like as an example, before I recorded this episode, I asked ChatGPT to give me a bunch of suggestions, but I usually never do that. I'll never ask for input. I'll just create my output with ChatGPT or with Claude or whatever. And I actually started recording this episode, a different episode, right before. And I went to the kitchen, grabbed the tea, and I was like, I can't talk about this. This subject line, this subject doesn't excite me. And then I thought of this concept. I was like, this excites me. This is something I want to talk about. And so this was not generated by ChatGPT, but I will use it to generate my copy. So there you go. DM me the word buddy on Instagram on FastForwardAmy. I hope this gave you a little insight. The downside to creating this just on the go, I'm actually getting ready to leave for the airport in 45 minutes, is these are just bite-sized episodes. I hope you like it though. And I hope this makes you think about how you can infuse more, how can you get your audience to trust you more before you ask for the sale? That's the key here. How can you get your audience to trust you more before you ask for the sale, so that when you're selling, people will just buy really, really quickly? Good luck. DM me for the buddy tutorial. Oh, and by the way, if you've always wanted to start a podcast, do remember what I said. I don't think it's necessarily useful for everyone. I don't think you necessarily need a podcast to grow from 5 to 6 figures. But if you want to go from 6 to 7, I think it might be really, really useful to infuse some type of nurture content like this into your Instagram or whichever platform you use. Okay, good luck, and let me know if you have any questions. And if you want my guide on starting your podcast, I also created a free guide on that. You can grab it through fastforwardamy.com/start your podcast, or I think on Instagram, if you DM me start podcast, all one word, then I'll also send you the free guide to start your own podcast. Good luck, and talk to you next week, Tuesday. Bye.